This video is going to be me about, not about me, but me talking about how people make themselves look bad in a green room or a pool room. This is how I see people look dumb in a pool room. People come in there flamboyantly and with their chest puffed out and they're ha 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 ha, and they're laughing and they're trying to fucking be somebody they're not, and they're just over the top going at it, and they're ordering rounds for everybody, and they're drinking way too much, and they're getting really loud and obnoxious, and they're playing pool, and they're shooting shots, and most of the time it's just every shot is just 7. It's a speed 7 out of 7. Every time it's just, they're shooting as hard as they can. You can tell they're not putting really any thought into what they're doing. Every time they jump up, they're racking the cue stick on the lights that sit about 3 or 4 feet above the table. They're hitting the stick on the lights. They're dropping their cue stick. They're constantly knocking the cue ball off the table, which isn't really a bad thing. Sometimes you have to make shots that have so much speed in English where the cue ball might just jump off the table. That doesn't mean you're an amateur. That just means you might go and shooting for a hard shot. But if you're knocking the cue ball off the table every 5 or 6 hits, you're playing as hard as you can, which is pretty much a bad way to play. Yeah, if you're leaning your cue stick up against the table, and it keeps falling down, and you keep dropping the cue sticks on the ground, and you keep you're stumbling as you try to stand back up. You're stumbling. And you can't stand up correctly. Most pool halls that I've ever shot in usually have tables side by side. Usually about 4 or 5 feet away from each other is another table. So to keep in mind, you have to think, if it's a busy room, if it's a busy green room means pool room, then there might be somebody, when you stand back up, you might just bump into somebody or mess up their shot. They might be queuing down right behind you, shooting at their table, which is perpendicular to your table, in opposite fashion. And as you stand back up, what I would say is you need to, before you even get down on a shot, you need to look at what the other table next to you is doing. And if they have a shot that looks like it'll be anywhere near your perimeter when you get down, then maybe not even take your shot. Let them take their shot first so they can get out of your way. But if you're going to just go ahead and rush in and take your shot anyways, before you just jump straight back up, look behind you a little bit. Look side to side a little bit, 45 degrees, to see if there's somebody standing there queuing down on their table right behind you, so you can get out of their way. Part of playing pool is not all about you playing pool. It's about being respectful of the other patrons in the place that you're playing pool and not getting in their way as well. And hopefully they do the same thing, but most people are amateur and they don't think about that. But if you're trying to get better at your posture, and if you're trying to get better at having class in a green room, then that's something you should be thinking about. I don't bump into people when I play. I make a point to look both ways before I get down, and I make a point to look around me before I get back up. Every time I make a shot, whether it's before the shot or after the shot, usually both. And I'm so good that I can play on just one side of the table. I don't even have to play on both sides of the table. I can make whatever shots I want from either side of the table. So if I'm on a table on the left and there's a table on the right of me, and there's a couple on the right of me playing, and on the left of me there's another table that's empty, I'll play on that side of the table mostly, and I'll totally void the other side of the table most of the time. But yeah, I don't drop my cue stick on the ground. I don't do that. The way I avoid that is when I'm done making a shot, if I have to re-rack, what I do is I just slip my cue stick onto the table completely, and I lay it flat down on the table. There's nothing wrong with that. You can lay your cue stick down on the table completely. You should never really lean your cue stick up against the table or up against the shelf where your drinks are at. You shouldn't really do that. Nobody really does that if you know what you're doing. Just lay your cue stick down on the table, go re-rack, and when you're done re-racking, look around you to see where everybody is standing and who's talking, conversating around you. And a lot of people are just having fun and conversating and standing around you, and they don't really care what you're doing. So you need to care. You need to think about what they're doing and stay out of their way, especially if you're playing by yourself, because most people are playing in groups. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you break really hard, or maybe you got a backspin shot where you got to jump up right away. On a backspin shot, you got to hit the cue ball at a downward angle. And it's a very difficult shot, but if you do it, basically what's going to happen is your cue ball, if your object ball is only about 6 inches in front of the cue ball, what's going to happen is the cue ball is going to spin backwards quickly, almost immediately. So you got to jump back and jump up out of the way. So before you make that type of shot, you should look behind you and look around you a little bit. So when you do jump back and jump up a little bit and raise your cue stick up out of the way to make room for the cue ball to roll backwards, you'll have clearance. But don't jump up so high that you knock your cue stick into the lights sitting above the table. You also have to be aware of that. And other than that, the only other way you can really make yourself look stupid in a green room is to just be a thirsty simp fucking hitting on every single chick that walks past you or looks at you. Because most of these places are kind of small, and there's just going to be tons of people looking around, and they're kind of bored, and women are going to be on their phones and looking around. That doesn't mean they really want your attention. Maybe they catch eye contact with you. Well, that's because they're sitting 6 feet away from you at a table next to you, and maybe they're with their girlfriends or with their husband or their boyfriend. It doesn't really mean they want you to go hit on them. It's not a green light. What is a green light is for you to posture up and be aware of what you're doing and not make yourself look stupid. Pool billiards is a classy game, and I'd appreciate it if more people respected the game and weren't dropping their cue sticks and busting the cue sticks on the lights and hitting on every chick that walks past them. But you do whatever you want to do, man. I mean, but if you see me in there, I won't be acting all stupid. Guarantee you that.